Hello, hello. All right, we're live. Welcome tonight to a very interesting subject. I can't say it's one of my favorites, though. All right, so let's work on trust tonight. And let's go ahead and see what you guys think about this. Now, who would you want to trust when it comes to the matter of flat Earth? Would you rather hear about a Pulitzer Prize winning New York Times foreign affairs columnist, true life journalist? I mean, here we have his brief history of the 21st century, or this agenda of the flat earth cult. And more importantly, how does C.W. Chanter and Unirock all work into this ridiculous situation that's going on? I mean, in this YouTube community. And, I do my platform on education, and I know that's not very popular, but it is what I have an interest in. So, we all take our chances and we all do our thing. But what I do want to talk about is Thomas L. Friedman's national bestseller, copyrighted in 2005, called The World is Flat, A Brief History of the 21st Century. So, let me give you a shot of this guy. Pull up my little curtain for the night. This is Thomas Friedman. Now, like I said, he's won the Pulitzer Prize 3 times for his work at the New York Times, where he serves as the foreign affairs columnist. He is the author of 3 best-selling books, From Beirut to Jerusalem, and that's 1989, winner of the National Book Award for Nonfiction, and still considered the definitive work on the Middle East. The Lexus and the Olive Tree, Understanding Globalization, 1999, and Latitudes and Attitudes, Exploring the World After September 11th. And that was in 2002. Now, the first thing that we want to keep in mind is there's some people that want to believe that we're stuck in a perpetual loop and there's nothing new under the sun. And I've denied that many times, not just through my own personal experience, but through things we can document and actually see in front of our very eyes. So the idea that 2019 would be a replay of 1999 is not only asinine and ludicrous, but it's also misinformed. And I mean, if you think it's interesting, I guess that's okay. But here again, when we're dealing with what has actually transpired and dealing with the trauma of it, I think it's a different story. So I want to tell you how this show came about. On Friday, I was talking with my son, Ian, and we were getting into a pretty intense subject. And so I brought up the flat earth. And at that point, he asked a couple questions and we delved down, I guess what you'd call the religious rabbit hole, right? And why flat earth? I mean, if you really think about it, it's something that nobody can prove if you're on the hysteria end of the subject. But Whereas with Thomas's book, The World is Flat, it gives a specific story, and it even puts it into a human relationship, which I thought was great. So after we were done with our conversation, I did go up to the library and get the book. And I had looked at it before. When I say that, I would speed read through it and tag specific things. So the way we're going to start our journey tonight is when I went upstairs to get the book, the page I opened to would be this page. And then I went and I thought, okay, let's do something, that I did in school. I don't know if you guys did or not. But when I wanted to learn, I would underline. It's hard to get comfortable. No glasses with bright light, curtain, whatever. So let me just read you the tags, okay? Their backroom work, India, but it remained limited by what they could be handled by satellite, where there was a voice delay. Health scribe, initially explored having Indians in Maine, that is, American Indians, using some kind of the federal money earmarked for the tribes to get started. They could never get them interested enough to put the deal together. The cost of doing the transcription in India was about 1/5 the cost per line of doing it by the United States. Lady Luck, Two Directions, Fiber Optic Bubble, Y2K Computer Crisis, Millennium Bug, Internal Clocks, Save Memory Space, dates with just 6 digits, January 1st, 2000, IITs, private technical colleges, computer schools. As so, with Y2K bearing down on us, America and India started dating. The relationship became a huge flattener because it demonstrated to so many different businesses that the combination of a PC, the internet, and fiber optic cable had created the possibility of a whole new form of collaboration and horizontal value creation, outsourcing. Great. Okay, so this is all business, strictly business. And it's about uniting the globe in some fiasco to outsource jobs and to let each person have the riches for just a minute. Because that way, when you bring it back, you have completely reduced the value of whatever jobs there are to be had. And the other interesting thing I think about it is not one place. Is there anything at all to do with religion in this conversation? And here again, this is a nonfiction work. So when you get into the PSYOP on YouTube and you get into the flat earth, it's about religiosity versus being an atheist or a recovering atheist or a traumatized religious fanatic, because the earth is either round or flat. Why would we waste time and energy on something like that, when the real question is, what happened with the India connection and also the China connection, and how it even relates to what's going on politically at the current time. So, for anyone that says, boy, it's really either a great thing or a terrible thing what the current president is doing, you have to realize we have to go back to the politics and the presidency pre Y2K. And so, here again, it matters not if Trump was in the background compared to allegedly being in the foreground now. It's all a premeditated script, and it's things that happened and that were real. But here again, there's never enough time to focus. And who would want to take it seriously? I mean, I know for me, Y2K was nothing more than a nuisance. I wasn't online. I was pregnant with my first child. My last, my first son. But, when you're thinking about things all shutting down and no power and this massive wipeout of something that I had no interest in as a mother or as a businesswoman, you can see why to me Y2K was stupid. I just, I just really wanted to live my life. Where now, to be in the middle of all these imploding psyops while we try to get to the truth is primary to me. Completely different. Okay, so let's go over some of this. Now, using a fiber optic cable connected workstation, Indian techies could get under the hood of your company's computer and do all the adjustments, even though they were located halfway around the world. The upgrading was tedious, and that was not going to give them an enormous competitive advantage, said Vivek Paul, the Wipro executive, whose company did some outsourced Y2K drudge work. So all these Western companies were incredibly challenged to find someone else who could do it and do it for as little money as possible. They said, we just want to get past the damn year 2000. So they started to work with Indian technology companies who they might not have worked with otherwise. To use my parlance, they were ready to go on a blind date with India. They were ready to get fixed up, added Jerry Rayo. Y2K meant different things to different people. For Indian industry, it represented the biggest opportunity. India was considered as a place of backward people. Y2K suddenly required that every single computer in the world needed to be reviewed, and the sheer number of people needed to be reviewed line by line. Code existed in India. The Indian IT industry got its footprint across the globe because of Y2K. Y2K became our engine of growth, our engine of being known around the world. And they never looked back after Y2K. By early 2000, Y2K work started to wind down, but then a whole new drive of business emerged, e-commerce. The dot-com bubble had not yet burst. Engineering talent was scarce, and demand from dot-coms was enormous, said Paul. Okay, so what we've got here is the whole implosion of what has happened in e-commerce. And, like I found out in 5 years, good luck to you if you're a small business person that actually has a business to get online, because the whole e-commerce and all the scamming really is done in a very poor business model. And so just like when they flattened the earth, the business model was poor. They only cared about the price. And even when you make these kind of projections and you say, okay, I've got 7 years to make money. Well, like they say in the book later, what good did that do any person in America? And you guys know I'm not looking at it like just one country, but I'm saying, as the author of this book, being an American man, he's saying, wouldn't you guys have thought, really, that people would have known that? So here's the exact sentence. Wouldn't individual Americans be better off if our government erected some walls and banned some outsourcing and offshoring? Wow. So the whole thing about build the wall, it really doesn't have anything to do with separating off a country. Maybe it has to do with global technology, because here again, everything is veiled. Always remember that. All right. Outsourcing from America to India as a new form of collaboration exploded. By just stringing a fiber optic line from a workstation in Bangalore to my company's mainframe, I could have Indian IT firms like Wipro, Infosys, and Tata Consulting Services managing my e-commerce and mainframe applications. Once we're in a mainframe business, and once we're in e-commerce, now we're married, said Paul. But again, India was lucky that it could exploit all that undersea fiber optic cable. I had an office very close to the Leela Palace Hotel in Bangalore, Paul added. I was working with a factory located in the Information Technology Park in Whitefield, a suburb of Bangalore, and I could not get a local telephone line between our office and the factory. Now here's the key part. Unless you pay a bribe, you could not get a line, and we wouldn't pay. So my phone call to Whitefield would go from my office in Bangalore to Kentucky, where there was a GE mainframe computer we were working with, and then from Kentucky to Whitefield. We used our own fiber optic lease line that ran across the ocean, but the one across town required a bribe. Okay, so here again, we're talking about building a network globally of not only fiber optic cable, but a bunch of altering the earth, let's say. So while everybody wants to talk about how these attacks befall us, is it possible that taking a ley line like that and cutting across it could do any damage? Some say no, and others know that all the towns and cities were built on ley lines in order to control the geographical region. Now it says India didn't benefit only from the dot-com boom. It benefited even more from the dot-com bust. So here again, what we're seeing is the thing imploding costs as much money and makes as much profit off of suffering as what the initial investment paid. The boom laid the cable that connected India to the world, and the bust made the cost of using it virtually free, and also vastly increased the number of American companies that would want to use fiber optic cable to outsource knowledge work to India. Y2K led to this mad rush for Indian brain power to get the programming work done. The Indian companies were good and cheap, but price wasn't first on the customer's mind. Getting the work done was, and India was the only place with the volume of workers to do it. Then the dot-com boom comes along, right in the wake of Y2K. And India is one of the few places where you can find surplus English-speaking engineers at any price, because all of those in America have been scooped up by e-commerce companies. Nice. Then the dot-com bubble burst, the stock market tanks, and the pool of investment capital dries up. American IT companies that survived the boom and venture capital firms that still wanted to fund startups had much less cash to spend. Now they needed those Indian engineers, not just because there was a lot of them, but precisely because they were low cost. So the relationship between India and the American business community intensified another notch. They go on to say that one of the great mistakes made by many analysts in the early 2000s was conflating the dot-com boom with globalization, suggesting that both were just fads and hot air. When the dot-com bust came along, these same wrong-headed analysts assumed that globalization was over as well. Exactly the opposite was true. The dot-com bubble was only one aspect of globalization. And when it imploded, rather than imploding globalization, it actually turbocharged it. I guess that means like when something goes viral, it's like a snowball running down a hill and they cannot control it. Now, this Pratt, an Indian American, was one of the most prominent venture capitalists in Silicon Valley. His firm, Northwest Venture Partners, was in the middle of the transition. It says a lot of the Indian engineers in the US on temporary work visas got laid off, so they went back to India. If this is in Silicon Valley, you can see now how it would have been easy for so many what they would call illegal aliens would have entered globally, not just from Mr. Obvious allegedly coming up from where the wall needed to be built. Mexico, Texas, California, whatever. All right. Now, a result of the bust was the IT budgets, and virtually every major US firm got slashed. Every IT manager was told to get the same amount of work or more done with less money. So, guess what he does? He says, you remember Vijay from India who used to work here during the boom and then went back home? Let me call him over in Bangalore and see if he will do the work for us for less money than what we would pay an engineer here in the US. And thanks to all the fiber cables laid during the boom, it was easy to find Vijay and put him back to work. The Y2K computer readjustments work was done largely by low-skilled Indian programmers right out of tech school. But the guys on visas who were coming to America were not trade school guys. They were guys with advanced engineering degrees. So a lot of our companies saw these guys were good at Java and C++ and architectural design work for computers. And then they got laid off and went back home. And the IT manager back here, who is told, I don't care how you get the job done, just get it done for less money, calls VJ. Once America and India were dating, the burgeoning Indian IT companies in Bangalore started coming up with their own proposals. The Y2K work had allowed them to interact with some pretty large companies in the United States. And as a result, they began to understand the pain points and how to do business, process implementation, and improvement. So the Indians, who were doing a lot of very custom code maintenance to higher value add companies, started to develop their own products and transform themselves from maintenance to product companies, offering a range of software services and consulting. Yep. Says this took Indian companies much deeper inside American ones, and business processing outsourcing, letting Indians run your back room, went to a whole new level. I have an accounts payable department, and I could move the whole thing to India under Wipro or Emphasis and cut my costs in half, said Haig. All across America, CEOs were saying, make it work for less. And the Indian companies were saying, I have taken a look under your hood, and I will provide you with a total solution for the lowest price. In other words, the Indian outsourcing companies said, do you remember how I fixed your tires and your pistons during Y2K? Well, I could actually give you a whole lube job if you like. And now that you know me and trust me, you know I can do it. To their credit, the Indians were not just cheap, they were also hungry and ready to learn anything. Okay, so now as our jobs allegedly come back, what are they? They're cheap. And someone that was skilled as a professional 25 years ago made more money than what they do today. And these are with college degrees. Now I hear a lot of people as they mock, oh, the conditions of life, say that nobody wants to work, or that we need a shorter work week, or that the robots just do it. This would be the blowback to everything that's happened here online past the year 2000 again. So really, how can anything be the same in a new millennium that wasn't orchestrated in the prior century? And then, of course, we go back to the year 1000, which is when they say they bottomed out the money last time. And all of these things go back to this Y2K clock. So, allegedly, we should be buried 6 feet deep in a hole right now. And here we still sit. I don't know what exactly is coming in December, for example, where I bank, but they're terrified of it. And it was obvious on their faces when they were dealing with my identity theft and getting my charge card safe and doing what I need to do to protect myself the best I can. But here again, when you connect a globe and everybody's, let's say, butt hurt. I don't even like that word. But everybody wants to blame somebody else. By the time this has all happened, and this is 15, 20 years ago, you can see why you get really upset when you have to deal with an IT tech or a phone room person that you cannot even keep up with the language. And the next thing you know, you're saying yes to something you're not even sure what was said. This is where this gets really problematic. And back to the whole nightmare of the flat earth debate online. That's not even, here again, what it's really about. It's a whole other poking of history versus the erasing of history. And really, every day we argue is another day wasted, is always the way I see it. Okay. Let's see if there's anything else I want to get you here. August 15th is a huge day with this whole story about the United States and India dating. So they believe Y2K should be a national holiday in India, set a second Indian Independence Day, in addition to August 15th. As John Hopkins foreign policy expert Michael Mandelbaum, who spent part of his youth in India, put it, Y2K should be called Indian Interdependence Day because it was India's ability to collaborate with Western companies thanks to the interdependence created by fiber optic networks. It really vaulted it forward and gave more Indians than ever some real freedom of choice in how, for whom, and where they worked. And that is a beautiful thing when you're so oppressed. One of the biggest jobs in India is the children that are sent down into the mica mines to retrieve the sparkly mineral that's used in makeup and body care products. So at least this way some adults can get to work. I guess that is a better thing. Now they say this August 15th commemorates freedom at midnight. Y2K made possible employment at midnight, but not just any employment. Employment in India's best knowledge workers. Y2K gave independence to Indians. Not all, by any stretch of the imagination, but a lot more than 50 years ago. Right. India was lucky, but it also reaped what it had sowed through hard work and education and wisdom of its elders who built all those IITs. Louis Pasteur said a long time ago, fortune favors the prepared mind. Okay. Now in this next chapter, it says flattener number 6, offshoring, running with gazelles, eating with lions. And this is about China coming into this whole situation. So here again, when you deal with your factions on your communities on YouTube, and you see certain countries lining up with other ones, I think it has a little more to do with this nonfiction book than it has to do with what party you belong to, or if you walked away, or if anybody grabbed your boob. There's a little poem, and it says, every morning in Africa, a gazelle wakes up. It knows it must run faster than the fastest lion, or it will be killed. Every morning, a lion wakes up. It knows it must outrun the slowest gazelle, or it will starve to death. It does not matter whether you're a lion or a gazelle. When the sun comes up, you better start running. On December 11th, 2001, China formally joined the World Trade Organization, which meant Beijing agreed to follow the same global rules governing imports, exports, and foreign investments that most countries in the world were following. It meant China was agreeing, in principle, to make its own competing playing field as level as the rest of the world. A few days later, the American trained Chinese manager of a fuel pump factory in Beijing, which was owned by a friend of mine, Jack Perkowski, the chairman of CEO and ASIMCO Technologies, an American auto parts manufacturer in China, posted the proverb that we read earlier. And he says he doesn't even know who the lion's or who's the gazelle. But he does know this. Ever since the Chinese joined the World Trade Organization, both they and the rest of the world have had to run faster and faster. This is because China's joining the WTO gave a huge boost to another form of collaboration, and that's offshoring. Offshoring, which has been around for decades, is different from outsourcing. Outsourcing means taking some specific but limited function that your company was doing in-house, such as research, call centers, or accounts receivable, and having another company perform the exact same function for you, and then reintegrating their work back into your overall operation. Offshoring, by contrast, is when a company takes one of its factories that is operating in Canton, Ohio, and moves the whole factory offshore to Canton, China. There it produces the very same product in the very same way, only with cheaper labor, lower taxes, subsidized energy, and lower healthcare cost. Just as Y2K took India and the world to a whole new level of outsourcing, China's joining the WTO took Beijing and the world to a whole new level of offshoring, with more companies shifting production offshore and then integrating it into their global supply chains. It was back in 1977 that the Chinese leader put China on the road. I'm not going to try to pronounce his name, but put him on the road to capitalism, declaring later that to get rich is glorious. When China first opened its tightly closed economy, companies in industrialized countries saw it as an incredible new market for exports. Every Western or Asian manufacturer dreamed of selling its equivalent of 1 billion pairs of underwear to a single market. Some foreign companies set up shop in China to do just that. But because China was not subject to world trade rules, it was able to restrict the penetration in its market by these Western companies through various trade and investment barriers. And when it was not doing that deliberately, the sheer bureaucratic and cultural differences of doing business in China had the same effect. Many of the pioneers investors in China lost their shirts and pants and underwear, and with China's Wild West legal systems, there was not much recourse. Yep, big labor pools, selling huge amounts of stuff for barely anything, and we want to know how we got here. This is 10 forces that flatten the world. And I know, like I said, it's not very exciting. I know it's not as much entertainment as what I could show you they say flat Earth is. I don't even really want to think, I don't even want to hear them talk. And you guys should already know what they're saying. So the reason I brought this was to document it. And that way everybody can say, well, I had no idea. That one person watches, or the network streams it, then people know. All right. This book is a groundbreaking, Pulitzer Prize winning, incredible book. And it's, like I said, it's absolutely amazing. What it does say is that the attacks on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon on 9/11 and the Iraqi War, when they write the history of what's happened, that's what takes up the time between Y2K to March 2004. Think about that. I mean, all the hoopla when it was something this big that we missed or didn't care about. All right. Or the convergence of technology and events that allowed India, China, and so many other countries to become part of the global supply chain for services and manufacturing, creating an explosion of wealth in the middle classes of the world's two biggest nations and giving them a new stake in the success of globalization. And with this flattening of the globe, which requires us to run faster in order to stay in place, has the world gotten too small and too fast for human beings and their political systems to adjust in a stable manner? Yeah, and that's the truth. Because in the end of all this, I mean, what jobs are there left for us to run faster to? Only ones you sell out for. And that's where they got the trap. I mean, in my mind. All right. Thomas Friedman demystifies the brave new world for readers, allowing them to make sense of the often bewildering global scene unfolding before their eyes. With his intimate in INIMITABLE ability to translate complex foreign policy and economic issues. Friedman explains how the flattening of the world happened at the dawn of the 21st century. The world is flat as a timely and essential update on globalization, its successes and discontents, powerfully illuminated by one of our most respected journalists. I wonder what he thinks about small businesses come back or working within a community or earning a decent living being self-employed. Well, that's about all I've got to say tonight. I really wasn't in the mood to even do this live stream, but with all the talk today online, and then, oh my goodness, the whole thing with the mocking here again by certain content creators. I mean, why in the world do I keep trying? And it's strictly for that reason. The stupider it gets, the more I'll talk, and the more I'll grab books, and the more I'll try to bring these stories. But, like I said, I don't get this whole time loop bullshit, but it's got to be null and void if you just look at this book. And no religion in this, strictly politics and business, but the whole other arguments about religion here again. He's caught in the loop. Too much trauma, too much pride, too much backdating. So I think I'm gonna get out of here. And it can be short because most people only watch 4 minutes, right? Thanks for the people who are here. I hope that y'all are having an awesome day. Pretty soon we'll be on the Veterans Day holiday, won't we? What about our fallen that fight this war here, that never serve in the military? I think they deserve a shout out too. I believe if our fallen military knew what they had been fighting for, they might be pretty traumatized. They might even have like a break where they say, why the hell did I even go to war? Kind of like my grandpa. He knew it was a racket when he was there in North Africa. He knew it was a racket when they made him fight when he was too old. He knew it was a racket because of the secrets. And he sent him back home in letters to my grandmother and talking about that, which is what got me doxxed with my mother's maiden. Isn't that classy? I think about the job my grandpa did in World War II quite a bit. When's it going to stop? And what is happening with YouTube? What do people want to see? How are they going to get back to learning? Who do they trust? And here again, the gentleman in this book is a completely trustworthy man, but nobody's talking about his story. Nothing but blue chickens and bullshit out here. And drama. Oh well, it's just another day. Get drunk, barbecue some pork, and go spit on a graveyard or something. Maybe if it's nice tomorrow, I'll go try to find my grandfather's grave. Because my mom and grandma never went. So with that, happy Veterans Day.